Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Tech Tuesdays, and thank you all for joining us for this rapidly developing technology journey from industry, academia, and stakeholder investment communities. My name is Dunstan Powell, Marketing Communications Manager at BetaDen, Worcestershire's first dedicated technology accelerator and also recent winners at the UK Business Tech Awards for the best technology accelerator in the UK. This event will begin with 3 presentations based around the subject of Web 3.0 and AI. Please use the chat function to position questions which our speakers will be able to answer live during the presentations. We make no apologies whatsoever in delivering 3 presentations today because of the combination of breadth and perspective from all 3 keynotes will combine to position the future and the value this emerging marketplace offers. Web 3.0 presents a major shift in the way the internet is being used, with the integration of blockchain and AI at its core. With Web 3.0, we can expect a more user-centric, secure and efficient web which will have a profound impact on many aspects of our lives. First, we will hear from Adrian Burden, CTO of BlockMark Technologies. Adrian will start with an introduction into the world of Web 3.0 and AI, as well as some of its applications.
Good afternoon everybody, and thank you BetaDen for having me to the Tech Tuesday this year. I'm going to talk about Web 3.0 and in particular cover the topics AI, artificial intelligence, blockchain, crypto and dApps or distributed applications. I think first of all it's important just to explain what we mean by Web 3, and everybody's very familiar actually with Web 1 and Web 2. So if you cast your minds back to when you first used the internet, you will have been using very plain text on web pages, and that was Web 1.0, that was pioneered by HTML and Tim Berners-Lee, and then that progressed to more interactive websites, which we term Web 2.0, and that includes social media, internet banking and so forth, where we're expecting the web pages to be dynamic, update depending on what it is that we're doing, and to be reactive to what we're putting in and so forth. And so Facebook is a classic example of Web 2.0. And that leads us on to Web 3. And Web 3, for the purists, will actually think about the semantic web, and again, work that Tim Berners-Lee is doing to make websites machine readable. But actually Web 3 is a bit broader than that, and it's all about the next generation of how the web and the internet will interact with the user, and also how it's structured in the back end. So it will be decentralized, it'll be autonomous, there'll be a lot more automation behind the scenes. The semantic web and the machine readability will be important, and overall it starts to contribute to what we're now starting to term the metaverse, this sort of visual, virtual or augmented reality that we're starting to put into the way that we interact with digital media. Now, part of that underpinning all of this will be how machines learn our interactions and how they process data, and this artificial intelligence will make the way that we interact with the web and the way that we process information, again, much faster, much more dynamic and much more personalised to what we're trying to do, either individually or with our business. But it all boils down to how we process vast quantities of data and interpret that kind of data. And in fact, we'll hear a little bit more about that from Alistair and how that feeds into the way in which we work after this. What I want to do is talk a little bit more about some of the other aspects of Web 3.0, including blockchain. Now, blockchain is a really interesting and important technology because decentralization is at the heart of how a blockchain works. So the way to think about a blockchain is think about a distributed ledger, a record of information, and then have that secured mathematically so that it's very difficult to tamper with earlier versions of the information. And then the decentralization aspect is that you have multiple copies of this information spread around the world, where you have multiple entries giving it the ability to be checked, and also if one of the records is damaged or destroyed or tampered with, you've got many other copies in which to refer to. So blockchain is a way of processing data in a distributed fashion. It actually opens up a way of transacting peer-to-peer. So what we mean by that is transacting from one person or one business to the next directly and cutting out the middleman. And this comes about because with blockchain and the cryptography that secures it, you're able to trust in the transaction. So you don't need a middleman, a clearinghouse, a centralized portal like a bank in order to be trustworthy that the transaction is going ahead. So peer-to-peer is actually something we're very used to anyway when we transact in cash. But actually, if you think about how you transact in the digital world on the internet, a lot of it is centralized, whether that's going to a central bank, central clearinghouse, central insurance broker, or in the case of social media, of course, a lot of the social media and social networking services are also centralized, like Facebook. Now, the way that this works and the way that we have trust in it is because mathematics plays an important part, and it encrypts the information and makes sure that it can't be tampered with, and also that we trust it and that we trust the results. And we can't go into that in detail today, but just be wary that the mathematics and the cryptography is very important. It's what makes the underlying process secure. It involves things like public and private keys, which are the equivalent to your public bank account, for example, and your private PIN number or your private password. And blockchain has been evolving. So very early on, we became very familiar with Bitcoin as one of the ways in which blockchain were being used. Now we've got other types of blockchains, including Ethereum, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second, which adds extra functionality and improvements to the original blockchain idea in terms of speed, robustness, and so forth. Now, as I mentioned, one of the key applications of a blockchain is to do with cryptocurrency, and most people will have come across it through either investing in Bitcoin or being aware of the cryptocurrency Bitcoin. And it turns out that the blockchain is a really good application for cryptocurrencies. And this is because it helps solve the double spend problem. Now, what we mean by that is if I email money to one person, there's nothing stopping me emailing the money to someone else, and that money in effect being spent twice. That's very difficult to do with cash unless you have counterfeit cash, and of course banks keep on top of all of this in terms of how much money is in your account and how you can spend it. Well, the blockchain also enables you to do this. So by having a robust record distributed around the world of the ledger then keeps track of who's spending what money. And this results in one of the forms, which is the Bitcoin, which many of us are familiar with. Now, the advantage is that this is a digital money, so this means that it can be transacted relatively quickly, it can be transacted in great distances around the world, almost instantaneously, depending a little bit on how the technology is implemented. And the actual Bitcoin underlying blockchain has been very robust since it was started in 2009. And although you hear about cryptocurrencies being hacked, it's actually not the blockchain itself that has been hacked. So the blockchain has been a very robust technology and has stood the tests of time. Bitcoin is not the only cryptocurrency. We also have the Ethereum blockchain, on which you have Ether cryptocurrency. This is actually the number 2 cryptocurrency in the world at the moment. And there are many, many others. In fact, you can go online and you can search other types of cryptocurrency, and you'll find that there are actually thousands of different tokens out there. Some very popular, some very much less so. And we call these fungible tokens, and these are an important part of blockchain. A fungible token is where one token is equivalent to another, like a dollar bill is equivalent to a dollar bill, and you can transact in these around the world. And if you ascribe value to them, and you believe in value, then you have a currency. And so people have been trying this with what we call ICOs, or initial coin offerings, where they've been issuing currencies or tokens, trying to gain traction and hoping that the next big cryptocurrency will take off and people will trust in it and trade in it. You may also be aware of the difference between a trading currency and a store of value. Over the years, we've seen Bitcoin becoming more of a store of value like gold. People invest in it because they think its value will overall go up. Whereas actually what you really need in a cryptocurrency is something that is not volatile and that allows you to transact without losing or gaining too much value between different transactions like a regular currency. So we still haven't really seen that in the crypto world yet, but I think this is something that will eventually happen, hopefully very quickly. The other thing that you will have come across, I'm sure, are NFTs. They've been popular in the newspapers recently. They stand for non-fungible tokens, and a non-fungible token is one that is different from another. So they're not equivalent. They're like works of art or individual bits of items or intellectual property. And they've also taken the world by storm, really, in that they have demonstrated that people are interested in trading and collecting these non-fungible tokens. Now, the first versions of the non-fungible tokens were arguably on the Ethereum blockchain. This is a blockchain that's capable of dealing with these kind of assets because the blockchain is a bit more complicated than the one that was used for Bitcoin. It actually allows code to be run in a distributed nature and for things like smart contracts to be created, which, as we'll see in a second, are also very important. Now, there have been a whole range of digital assets, crypto assets that have been launched in the form of NFTs over the recent years. Some of you may have come across CryptoKitties or Bored Ape Yacht Club. Some have been very successful, others may have been created and very few people have interacted or collected them. But the basic premise is that there are tokens that are individual, linked to art or other intellectual property. That could be sound, music, movies and so forth as well. And then what you do is you collect that art or store it in your digital wallet and transact and sell it just as you would conventional art, albeit it's a lot easier to do so in the digital realm. So at BlockMark Technologies, where I work, we have actually experimented with this as well, and we've created some gems, which are digital algorithmic art, where we've used template generated by a real artist and then used algorithms to generate variations. And then we went to next stage after that was successful and launched another collectible called the Picaroons, which are pirate-based characters. Again, algorithmic or generative art where different characters are built to create a whole collection of 10,000 individual units. And we've demonstrated with the work that we've done that these things are indeed sellable, collectible and retradable. And the blockchain enables this to happen, basically. It enables the trust to exist so that people can transact in these works of art and trust that they own it and that they get the money for it when they do sell it. And then over time, if people believe in the value of the art, the collectors can then sell it onwards. And in fact, it can be programmed into the blockchain contract that the artist also gets a trading commission as a result of future sales, which is very different to the physical art world. So again, a really interesting area of development and still very early days, and I think we're going to see more and more of this, particularly as the metaverse takes off and we start to have more art and more IP-based assets in digital gaming and in other metaverse virtual worlds and realities. Because what it means is that the NFTs are portable as you jump from one to the other. You can have the NFT in one immersed world and then you could take it arguably with you to another and not rely on the centralized system that's running that individual world. So again, that portability will be really, really fascinating. And that leads us on to the final thing that I wanted to mention, which are these distributed apps. What do we mean by that? Well, these are underpinned by the smart contracts that you can run on more sophisticated blockchains like Ethereum, and they start to have a much more of an impact in the digital metaverse world beyond just swapping tokens. We're going to see a lot of this in fintech. We already are starting to see financial technologies making use of this, and it boils down to having smart contracts that can be trusted. In other words, if a contract says a certain thing is going to happen, the blockchain kind of ensures that it does. And this means that you get away from centralized coding and you have more decentralized nature in what's happening. This will affect marketplaces, this will affect how things, goods and products and services move through the supply chain in terms of logistics. It enables you to link indelibly, if you like, physical assets with digital assets, which is important in modeling, it's important in sales, it's important in digital twins and improving, for example, energy use in cities. So it has a wide range of impact. And it all, I think, will start to manifest itself in virtual reality and augmented reality tools of the future. So all of this is very exciting, but what does it really mean to us, either personally or working in businesses? I think the important thing to understand is that it will be a paradigm shift in the future. So whereas we're used to, in businesses, transacting maybe through centralized hubs, as I mentioned, with our banking, with our insurance and so forth, expect more peer-to-peer transactions where you trust the interaction using blockchain. The biggest impact in the near term, I think, will be in business payments. We've all got very used to corporate digital business banking. We're used to corporate credit cards and so forth. I think in the very near future, we'll start having business payments using cryptocurrencies, which are fast, instantaneous, and do not involve centralized banking. We're also very used to writing contracts in businesses. Expect those to become smart contracts that are sitting on a blockchain and are dependent very much on a peer-to-peer transaction and not a central arbiter. And overall, we'll see more and more things, I think, happening in the digital realm as opposed to the physical realm, and there'll be a much more seamless integration. So at the moment, it's very difficult to interact with the blockchain in the sense that you need various bits of software. In the future, I think browsers will have native support for this, so you literally do just log into your Chrome browser or your Microsoft browser, and all the tools will be there to enable you to interact in this virtual, decentralized world. So, thank you very much. I hope you found that interesting. I'll be around to take questions, but also afterwards, by all means, use the contact details and get in touch if any of this sounds of interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian. Next up, we will hear from Alistair Munn, co-founder at BlockPlay. Alistair will talk about AI and its applications in the workforce, as well as the future of skills.
Thank you, BetaDen, for having me today, and thank you, Adrian. That was I really enjoyed your talk. You know, when you think about technology and you hear people talk about it, a lot of people talk about it in a futuristic kind of way where all the bells and whistles. What I really like about what you did there was show us the underlying technology and how that's going to be useful for the future. Sometimes when we look at things like the metaverse, some people's dystopian views aren't really helpful because we can't really picture ourselves using it in that way. I think now I have a really much better, clearer view of blockchain and some of those tools that we will be using. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about those underlying technologies and importantly how we use those for the future of work and what the future of work might look like. We BoxPlay, we're a learning company. We create learning products in collaboration with partners. And our focus is building for the future of work. What are those skills that we need? What are those underlying skills? And we're about empowering the workforce of the future. We're about making learning the new habit. And we want to make sure that we make 1 billion people employable by 2035. So what is the future of work and how do we approach that? Well, we have two approaches. One is looking at the technology. How's technology going to affect how we work? And again, also how's technology going to affect learning? How are we going to be able to use intelligent technologies to really think about the new ways in which we learn? The other side is really looking at how the legacy systems of teaching and learning have to change in relation to how work is going to change. So we have neuroscientists, behavioral scientists who really break down what does it mean to learn. And then we pull that together with our technologists, and then we have a really super team of creative team. We have Oscar nods. We've won some Emmys on our team because the future of learning has to be really engaging. And we do that through our partnerships. So one of the things we thought was, what does the future of work look like? We wanted to partner with one of the world's largest consulting firms. So we partnered with Accenture to really look at what that is. We then wanted to really understand the future of learning and assessments. So we partnered with Pearson to work on projects that aligned with that. And then we wanted to partner with one of the world's leading professional bodies membership bodies, and we did that with AICPA. They're the Association of International Chartered Professional Accountants, to create learning products. So the learning products that we created with them were all about thinking about the future of work, not only in topic, but also in approach. So when we talk about the future of work, what are we talking about? We're not talking about optimizing existing technologies. So we hear a lot of people at the moment saying things like, oh, hybrid work, and how are we going to use tools to do that? And there seems to be a lot of people thinking about making a better Skype, making a better Zoom, thinking about making a more optimized Slack. These are super important, but those are really tools which allow us to work. What we're talking about is what are those fundamental shifts in technology, and how are we going to use those to solve new problems? Now, in order to do that, I think there's a big focus on technology, but we have to take a step back and think about what are the drivers leading us to the future of work? What are those things that are impetus? And there are three things really come to mind: people, resources, and the fact that we have to adapt or cease trading. When we think about people, we hear in the media lots of things. For example, Gen Z workers are rejecting job offers based on companies' green records. We're talking about climate anxiety. What the heck is that? People are unable to work effectively and efficiently because they've got climate anxiety. And also people are just deflated. They wonder what has happened to the American dream, where we're all promised that if we work super hard, we concentrate and we struggle and we sacrifice, we're going to be able to improve our lot in life. Whereas the reality is 1% of the world owns over 50% of its wealth and resources. And we just know that the harder we work, the more mental anxiety we have, and we're just putting more money in the pockets of the super rich and not really moving that needle too much. So people are reassessing what does work mean, how are we structuring the world, and what do we need to be able to do to improve our lot. Maybe it's we deciding to work less and prioritize our work-life balance. The other thing is sticking with people. We used to think that career progress was linear. So you graduate and then you become an intern, and then you start big middle management, and then you go up to senior management, and then you become a consultant, and then you retire. Whereas we actually know that the career progress now is a very squiggly line. You start off, you graduate, then you decide, you're going to take a year off. You start working and you realize it's not what you want to do, so you do a career pivot. You then decide to upskill yourself, maybe move overseas for a couple of years. It's just not linear anymore, and the way that we have to think about skilling ourselves has to shift and change if we are to adapt to new ways of working. The second thing we need to think about is resources. So there's a move now for us to move from a value extraction economy through to a value creation economy. And this is manifested in different ways, two different ways. Physically, so we all hear about, moving from mining, extracting more metals to more recycling. We're thinking of taking less fossil fuels and going to renewables. And so that's more about figuring out how to better utilize our resources. The other one is philosophically. So we're thinking about new ways in which we structure business. We go from stakeholder value through to value ecosystems. We're moving from value chain ownership through to platforms. And we're thinking less about long-term value to more about agility, the fact that we need to change rather quickly in organizations today. And tied to all this is our need to either adapt or cease trading. So technology is driving innovation and relevance. And we can see that in 1980, the lifespan of a Fortune 500 company was 32 years. In 2023, it's projected to be 19 years. And then in 2028, that's going down to 17 years. What's happening is large companies either have to adapt or they go out of business. They have to reinvent themselves at a much quicker rate. And we have new entries into the market coming all the time, driven by new ways of working and new technologies. So what does this mean for us? We have spent the last 20 years trying to turn ourselves into robots. When we think about the legacy extracting value systems that we've been working on. Now we have robots, we have to think about turning ourselves back into humans. We need to think about moving away from legacy structures through to new ways of working and new ways of doing business. And part of that is shifting the way that we use technology. So at the moment, in the past we were in a search society. Before that it was what knowledge you had. Now we're in an asks society, and that's very different because it means that the way that we think about solving problems has shifted more towards asking the right questions, seeking the right ways of doing things, getting hold of knowledge that exists and thinking about ways in which we need to optimize them. And because of these shifts, it's our relationship with technology has to change. Many people think that technology is a barrier. Actually, what it is, it's an enabler. And we need to think about technology with man and machine, not man versus machine. And we have to think about how machines can work for us. The pace of change and innovation is so fast. We're recruiting for jobs at the moment that haven't existed before. And our children are training themselves and going to school, learning for jobs that don't even exist yet. And we have to think about changing the way that we react and adapt to technology. We spoke a little bit earlier about the legacy systems that we've been carrying through. Those systems are having to change because we're thinking about new ways of doing business. A good example of this is how people think about chat GPT. I don't know, I'm sure all of you have heard about it. There's a lot of news at the moment about how students are using chat GPT which is an AI-based learning algorithm. They're using it to cheat on exams. I think it passed a Harvard law exam, for example. Journalists are now using it to create articles instead of humans. And that goes against a lot of the way we think about our legacy systems, particularly legacy way we think about education. I was talking to my daughter the other day. She said something really interesting. She's 15 and she thinks differently. She's got a diverse way of thinking. And she said that ChatGPT, she thinks it's great. She says, why, if we have access to all the knowledge that exists, surely we should be able to harness that and to be able to take that, because if you ask me to do something, if I have access to that content, I can then use it in a very strategic way and think about using it to fill a brief versus trying to learn something, keep it in my head, and then regurgitate it in a way that is dictated by a legacy learning and exam system. She says it just doesn't make sense. Surely we should be using knowledge to either create new knowledge or to be able to optimize the way that we think about our existing infrastructures. And you know, when we think about AI and we think about technology, for me, technology is the most useful when it's invisible. I couldn't think of anything worse than being stuck in a virtual environment trying to pretend I'm with a lot of people. But the underlying tools that create those environments are super important, as we heard from Adrian earlier, in terms of how we're going to create smart contracts, how are we going to use non-fungible tokens to create and pass around value. For me, I use technology all the time. I have a smart watch which tracks my movements. It helps me optimize my health. That doesn't mean I'm stuck in front of a screen. Actually, what it's doing is it's encouraging me to be more healthy. So I spoke a little bit earlier about our partnerships. We did data analytics foundations with AICPA. And the reason why we chose to do this was the association was getting feedback from the accountants that they were worried about technology. What was happening is technology was taking their jobs. They're now, what technology is really good at is taking things that you can do over and over again that are easily definable and replacing those with systems. What we wanted to do with data analytics was they were really concerned because all the learning around data analytics for them was to either turn you into a data scientist or to a data engineer. And really what they needed was to be accountants who really understood how to use data so they could shift from being bookkeepers and doing regulation through to creating extra value from the data and the accounting information that comes out. They wanted to be more financial directors and be able to help streamline and structure the way that we do business based off all this information. So instead of being just data bookkeepers, they saw a way of using data in order to create extra value for their services. And that's the way we need to think about technology. We don't want to turn ourselves all into coders, but we really need to understand the underlying principles of this technology if we're going to create value within our organizations. And that brings up an interesting thing is there are technical challenges and adaptive challenges to change. Technical challenges, ironically, are easier to do because they're easy to define. You can resource them, and there are plans in place. If you have the budgets and the right people, you could put a new technology into place. The biggest issue with driving technology change is actually the human side. It's those adaptive challenges. How do we as people need to adapt? How do we need to upskill ourselves? How do we need to get over that fear of technology and realize that it's there to enable us? And I think that's why it's important for us to think about those human skills. You know, how do we turn ourselves back into humans? How do we create value? If machines are doing the repetitive tasks, it's up to us as humans to interpret that data and add that extra value, right? So we need we can skill ourselves. Some daft person called them soft skills. They're not, they're critical skills. How do we turn ourselves into better listeners? How do we critically think? What do we need to do in order to negotiate so that it's a win-win versus a stealing all the pie? So that's just a little bit to think about today. I think the takeaways for me from this is, technology should never be a barrier. Technology is there to enable us. We're not there to be stuck behind screens. We're actually there to use technology to improve our lives and to improve our systems. We create systems as tools for efficiency. If they're no longer efficient, then we should change and adapt them. And with constant change, we have to be agile and we have to be lifelong learners. Thank you. If you would like to ask any questions, I'm here in the chat, or please do reach out to me. I'm always happy to hear from other people. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Alistair. We are now moving on to the final presentation, where Lawrence Jackson, Infrastructure and Technology Lead at IONOS, will speak about Web 3.0 on a technical level.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lawrence Jackson. I work with IONOS Cloud. Some of you might have heard about us opening a data center in the region of Worcester end of last year. Some of you may have seen Aunt Helga on our adverts on TV. I'm here today to present in this BetaDen workshop, what is Web 3.0? Web 3.0 is a new internet revolution. Where did I start? So I did a search on the web, because that's where we all search when we want to find something. Did a search on what is Web 3.0. What I got was an answer, but not in your traditional binary sense of what an answer is. The answer was somewhat ambiguous. And what I hope to do in this presentation today is to give you a clearer sight of what Web 3.0 will become. So let's start with what Web 1 was, an initial overview of what the internet was. Between 1990 and 2005, the internet could be considered as being digital brochures, static pages showing read-only content with no login or interactive components. There was no likes or liking pages or reading analytics. Therefore, ads didn't exist like they do today, because this was not profitable with Internet 1 or Web 1. Imagine one Wikipedia with all the pages, websites hyperlinked together. This was essentially what all web pages were built on. With the wide usage of Flash and JavaScript, pages started becoming a bit more interactive, but users of the internet were primarily considered as consumers. Users went to the internet to consume information. Then came Web 2. This is the period of 2006 to the present day. Yep, today. The web has evolved in the last 13 years so much that it has transformed what the internet was and now is. With Web 1, we consumed information from web pages. With the introduction of Web 2, we moved into an era of websites getting information from us, the users, you and me. As social media interactions became the norm, sharing our personalized information with Facebook, YouTube, performing Google searches, this all became the norm and is. These centralized companies started taking the information we shared with them to serve us better content to keep us on their sites for longer. And in turn, this meant more money for these few companies behind the websites that we stayed on for longer. The website companies quickly realized that they could package the data they had collected from us to advertisers. Web 2.0 or Web 2 is the era of targeted advertising, and thus the rise of the need for privacy from the lack of privacy within ultimately Web 2. Today, users give away privacy for the exchange of receiving better app services, and this is the format of the exchange of today's internet experience. In Web 2, you and I could both visit the same social media website and see entirely different news feeds. This is because web pages now show content based on who is viewing the web page. This is a major factor in the evolution of Web 3.0, but we'll get to that shortly. The content on your feed is the website sorting data that you previously shared, such as likes, how long you watched a video for. These examples are things we all know we give and share with website companies, but it seems more and more you're getting ads on relevant interests that you have, but you didn't realize that you'd given that website company information relating to, things like where you want to go on holiday or what you want, that cool new product. Everything you and everyone else using public IP addresses does on the internet gives the website companies information, and that information can be sorted, to deliver outputs, suggestions that are becoming faster than than you and I's conscious realizations. So when you search for a summer outfit and then look at a web page of sunny Spain, advertising companies sort through all this information that you've provided in order to serve you content that is relevant to your wants. Users are starting to realize that one centralized company or small group of companies having all of this information is not only risky but a little bit scary. I won't go into any Orwellian books at this point. And it's this very behavior that has created the need for Web3, the next evolution of the internet. Web3 will use blockchain and decentralization tools. In Web2, you, the consumer, became the product. As you browse the internet, social media network sites, have you guessed it yet? Web3 is where you become the owner of your content. All those holiday images, videos, and stuff that you post online, take control. So if you want a post to stay up, it will stay up. And if you want a post to be taken down, in theory, you can control that. And the content can be taken down. This is still theory because within the blockchain technology stack, all owners of that ledger have a copy of the same information. The current general rule of the internet, once something's on the internet, it usually always remains on the internet. However, there are examples of Web3 sites already available on the internet. I'm sure a quick search and everyone will find those. Most people probably have heard of Web3 in context of crypto, but there are other sites out there. Blockchain alternatives to traditional sites like YouTube, where videos can be posted and creators can earn library tokens, already exist. The current issue with this blockchain services is that you can't really stop a video or content being posted. Web3 is a new internet, it's a new revolution built on top of decentralized networks, which ensures that there are no more points of failure or control. This makes it so the web can be more resilient and secure for everyone to use while giving users back their ability over how they want their data to be used. So imagine someone shares a video and someone else downloads the video. They can technically let others watch and download that video content as well. This is kind of like how torrent networks work. To expand, your post couldn't get taken down by a centralized website company because your post wouldn't exist only on the centralized company servers, theoretically. It could be on thousands of computers around the world, ensuring the blockchain technology you are on couldn't be attacked or censored. I know what you're all thinking, or you should be thinking. This has the potential for non-savory content to exist and be published. This should all be part of a freer user exchange on the internet in the name of freedom, where the users of such networks would also have the freedom to create a system that could reduce the creation of unsavory content. The emphasis being on the users, you and I, private entities rather than companies. Every user has a choice, and that choice would have a true value. Experts say that in Web 3.0, we'll reach the point where every company is run by a DAO, pronounced DAO. It's another topic, standing for decentralized autonomous organizations. Inside DAOs, there are no CEOs, there are no presidents. How the company is run and how it changes is voted on by those with the most tokens, kind of like shareholders. But the blockchain keeps the token ownership based on content production and users' interaction with said content. So you couldn't fudge the system by just, putting money in to buy a load of the tokens. Not limited by government or historic prejudicial prejudices, in Web 3.0, there'll be no censorship of things like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or any other social networks. One controlling authority couldn't shut it down. The prevailing tenet to Web3 is that your digital identity is not 100% connected to your real world identity. This means you can view pages, download content, make purchases, and any other activity over the internet without the action being traceable directly back to the real world, you or me. To summarize, what Web3 is and will become is you, the user, having the ability to purchase, for example, a gift card from a web store with a MetaMask and being able to pay using a digital currency. I won't name any, I'm sure everyone has seen the crypto ups and downs. Or you could anonymously leave a like on one of your friends' posts using a hidden wallet. Web3 is not one change function of the internet, but more of a series of ideas that grow together. Until centralized web companies are disassembled by legislators, while unregulated DAOs grow and replace these current monoliths, Facebook is a product company. Web 2.0 is an idea. Web 3 is also an idea. But another way of understanding what Web 3 is to imagine there is a big concept. And this big concept consists of multiple of ideas. Prevailing decentralization, anonymity, digital currencies. There'll be no one company selling you products that then in turn says that that company is Web 3.0. Web 3.0 ultimately is a combination of ideas that will create this new evolution of the internet, and it will remove the centralization of a few companies to you, the user, gaining access to your data and how it is utilized, who it's shared with, who can utilize it, who monetizes it, and do you monetize your own data? Thank you for your time. And if you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat and I'll respond to you directly. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. This brings us to a close of the presentations for today. Thank you all for watching BetaDen's Tech Tuesdays event, and thank you to our esteemed speakers who have shared their knowledge and expertise with us today. As great as this new digital age is, and being able to interact with everyone online, sometimes it doesn't quite match up to the value of a face-to-face meet. So saying that, we would like to invite you all to our regular BetaDen Beers event taking place on the 23rd of February, 5 p.m. till 7 p.m. A chance to meet us in person, ask your questions, and learn a bit more about the technology ecosystem we have here at BetaDen. You can see more details on the screen. To register, please follow the link in the description. Thank you all for attending today's event, and we hope to see you in person at our next live event. Goodbye.